So I'm kind of going to review ancient China from the PowerPoint that you guys should have went through. Just a quick review before I move on. The households, there was usually many people living in one household. You had brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles. So a whole generation usually lived together. And then the boys usually stayed with their families even after they grew up. And then the daughters would usually get married and they lived with that household. And then obviously the richer families had servants and slaves. The next one, men in ancient China, they had all the power over the women. The men and women were not equal to each other. So they had oversaw everything in the household. They were considered strong, intelligent, so they were usually the scholars, and they had a big responsibility to farm and trade or sell and to make money for the family. Next would be women in ancient China. Like I said, they were not equal to the men. They mostly just prepared food, clothing for the children. That was their job to bear children, and it was especially important that they had a son to carry on the family name. And they were obviously to obey all men, their fathers, their husbands, and then if they were widowed, so if their husband did die, they were to obey their sons as well. The ancestors were super important in ancient China because it was a family member who often passed away, and you still honored them after they passed away, so you often brought offerings to them because it was said that they were to bring you good luck, you and your family, so you didn't want to disappoint the ancestors. And then the last one I'm kind of going to go over is marriage. Almost always the marriage was arranged by the father. You also might have heard of matchmakers who would meet with you and they'd kind of see what you were like and they'd match you with someone who was similar. So the marriages were always arranged, and then once again they were expected to have children from that marriage. So just reviewing that, I'm going to go over a story. I'm going to read that story to you guys. The story is also online. There's a link, or it should be posted on your Schoology. It's called The True Story of Mulan. You guys might have seen the movie Mulan. It's taken in place in ancient China. So I'm going to read this with you. You guys can follow along if you have that on Schoology. So, once upon a time, a long time ago, there lived a girl in ancient China named Mulan. Mulan's father was a retired general. He had come home sick and frail. He was too old to fight, but not too old to teach Mulan how to ride a horse and use a sword. Girls usually did not learn these skills, but Mulan's father believed everyone should know how to fight, even girls. One day, the government officials sent warriors to Mulan's village. War was coming. Men were needed for the army. The military leader of the group posted a list of names in the village square. Each name represented one volunteer, one man from each family. Mulan saw her father's name on the list. She knew her father would never survive another battle. Mulan's brother was a young child. There was only Mulan who could take her father's place. But the military did not take girls as replacements for fighting men. Quietly the next morning, before her father could report for duty, Mulan stole his armor. She disguised herself as a man. She reported for duty. The warriors accepted him in her father's place. Later that day, as all the men taken from the village marched away, Mulan saw her father standing by the side of the road, shaking his head in confusion. He had reported for duty, but was told he was not needed. That made no sense to him. He had not yet returned home. He did not know that Mulan was missing. Mulan was very careful over the years. No one ever suspected that she was a girl. When the war was over, Mulan received a special award from the emperor himself for her outstanding courage. The emperor gave her a horse and a bag full of wealth and wished her a safe trip home. Her family greeted her with joy. Her brother was delighted with the gift of her military clothes. He dressed in them immediately. Mulan dressed once again in the clothes of a woman. That evening, Mulan and her family gathered together to watch the sunset. A few days later, two of the men who had served with Mulan stopped by her home on their way home. When Mulan came forth to greet them, they could not believe their eyes. One of them shouted, "You are not Mulan. What have you done with our friend?" After recounting many memories, they finally believed that Mulan was a woman who had fought by their side in many a battle. They spread Mulan's story across China. Mulan's story inspired many young women who demanded to learn how to ride a horse and use a sword just like Mulan. So just one more time, that story is on Schoology. If you want to listen to me reread it again, that's fine. You can follow along with it. So just kind of going over that, what we had just talked about was that the women were not equal to men in China. And that kind of supports that because the women were not allowed to fight in battle. It was not an expectation. It was only men. So it kind of tells us how superior the men were to the women. So obviously Mulan had to disguise herself as a man to be accepted. So once again, like I said, you guys might have seen the movie Mulan. That might be a good thing to watch at home. It kind of gives you a whole bunch of insight in ancient China and goes over the different topics. Like some of the topics you might see in the movie would the family structure, which is what we've been talking about, the matchmaker and arranging of marriages, the different dynasties, the ancestors, the Chinese army, and the war in China with the Huns. So that might be something you might want to watch at home on your own time. That might explain everything a little better to you. So what you guys should be doing after hearing the story and watching the video is you are going to compare and contrast the PowerPoint over family structure and then the true story of Mulan. So you're going to tell me what was the same about the PowerPoint and the story, and then what was different. So you need to go through those and kind of review them, make a list of things as you're reading each, and kind of compare and contrast those.